Welcome to StoryRealm Audio. Tonight's audiobook, Steel Doors and Silent Evidence, is an immersive forensic mystery filled with secrets, suspicion, and psychological suspense. Settle in and enjoy this relaxing narration as the story begins. Chapter 1. New Year in the Cutting Room. The first morning of the year arrived without mercy. Outside, snow scoured Boston in white gusts, but inside the medical examiner's suite, winter had no authority. The air was warm, metallic, and damp with the familiar machinery of death. Water ran hard into steel sinks. Saws shrieked through bone. The fine powder of opened skulls drifted in the light like pale flour. Dr. K. Scarpetta stood over a man who had ended his life with a shotgun and a toe on the trigger. Blood spotted her gown. Gray matter clung to her sleeves in soft, wet flecks. She did not need the laboratory to tell her he had been drinking. The moment she opened him, alcohol declared itself, sour, sweet, and rotten, the smell of a celebration decomposing from within. Years ago, as a resident, she had wondered whether people who destroyed themselves with liquor might be saved by a tour of the morgue. Let them see what champagne became after death. Let them breathe the truth of it. Let them watch a human skull open like a cup. But the dead were poor teachers to those determined not to listen. 3 autopsy tables were occupied. More bodies were waiting. New Year's Day had brought no peace. Across the room, her deputy chief, Jack Fielding, worked on a murdered university student. The boy had been shot at an ATM for a few bills, and the case had settled under Jack's skin before the first incision. In staff conference, he had mentioned that the victim was the same age as his daughter. Track star. Pre-med. Bright future. Scarpetta knew what that meant. Once Jack saw his own family inside the dead, the day would become dangerous. "Are we sharpening knives anymore?" he shouted. The saw screamed louder. A morgue assistant, busy prying off a skullcap with a chisel, shouted back. "Do I look idle?" Jack flung his scalpel onto a cart. Metal struck metal hard enough to make everyone flinch. Scarpetta weighed a lung, entered the measurements with the digital pen, and thought, not for the first time, that technology had changed everything except grief. There were no paper forms in sight anymore. No clipboards, no ballpoints. Notes could be downloaded, images stored, reports assembled cleanly on screens. Yet death remained as messy as ever. Her administrative assistant, Bryce, came through the door with an expression of theatrical disgust. He was not frightened by the dead. He was offended by inconvenience, germs, bad manners, and people who touched telephones with contaminated hands. He wrapped paper towels around his fingers before lifting the receiver from the black wall phone. "Benton," Bryce said, peering at Scarpetta. "She's here." Holding a very large knife. Scarpetta removed her face shield, stripped off her gloves, and dropped them into the red biohazard bin. She washed at the deep sink while Bryce continued talking. "Yes, we're having a charming holiday. Full house. Jack's about to combust. Maybe you can admit him to that Harvard hospital of yours and get us a group rate." She took the phone from him. "Stop tormenting Jack," she said, turning away from the room, then into the receiver. "What's happened?" There was a pause. Benton Wesley's voice came from New York, calm in the way a locked door was calm. "I'm afraid we have a situation." He had said the same thing the night before, just after she came home from the ATM homicide scene and found him leaving for the airport. NYPD had needed him. Bellevue had needed him. Now apparently they needed her too. "Jamie Berger wants to know how soon you can get here," he said. The name tightened something in Scarpetta's chest. Berger was more than a prosecutor. She was a corridor back into events Scarpetta preferred sealed. "The 1 o'clock shuttle if you can make it," Benton said. Scarpetta glanced at the clock. Nearly 10. She still had to finish the examination, dictate, shower, change, stop by the house. Food crossed her mind with practical urgency. Mozzarella? Chickpea soup? Meatballs, bread? Ricotta with fresh basil for the pizza Benton loved. She had cooked it all yesterday, not knowing she would spend New Year's Eve alone. "What kind of situation?" she asked. "A man was admitted late last night to Bellevue's forensic psychiatric unit. Berger wants you to examine his injuries. What has he been charged with? Nothing yet. That answer landed badly. Behind her, another blade screamed into bone. The bay buzzer sounded. On the monitor, a white delivery van idled outside while an arm reached from the driver's window. Can someone get that? Scarpetta called. Benton continued, his voice lower. There was a murder. An unusual one. The man is in isolation, and he refuses to cooperate unless you examine him. No warrant. Not yet. Then he should have been examined immediately. Any trace evidence may already be compromised. I know. But something in Benton's voice suggested the case was not the only thing compromised. Scarpetta had known him too long not to hear it. He was careful, brilliant, disciplined. Today he sounded like a man walking across thin ice. Why me? She asked. He knows who you are. He knows who I am. He demanded me for the psychological evaluation. He demanded you for the physical. Convenient. He says he's afraid of doctors. Pain. Undressing. Also beautiful women. I see, she said. And somehow I don't qualify? I think you qualify. That's not the problem. For the first time, fear touched the edges of his voice. She said, I'll come as soon as I can. Leave your bags in my office. Your crime scene case is ready. She looked at the dead man on her table and thought that the first day of the year already felt old. I'll see you this afternoon, she said. Travel safe. I love you. I love you, Benton replied. When she hung up, the morgue returned around her in full force. Saws, water, voices, the relentless labor of bodies yielding their last evidence. A new year had begun, and already it was asking for blood. Chapter 2. The Man Behind the Window. At Bellevue Hospital in New York, Benton Wesley sat 19 floors above a barren winter garden and stared through glass at red brick and a colorless sky. His headset wire trailed from one ear. His computer screen glowed with words he wished he could unread. The gossip column had appeared at midnight. Gotham gotcha. Anonymous, vicious, devoured by millions. This morning its target was Kay. Not merely her reputation. Her dignity. Her private injuries. The old wound that had never belonged to strangers. Benton scrolled down, then up, then down again, as if repetition might drain the poison from it. It did not. Words could be weapons. Kay often said sticks and stones were childhood nonsense, and she was right. In adult life, language could cut deeper than glass because it entered where no surgeon could reach. He lifted the phone and called Dr. Thomas. She answered, sounding hoarse. You sound as if you're about to confess to something. I sent you the link, Benton said. I read it. And my first question is whether you're more worried about Kay or yourself. He leaned back. That would make me selfish. It would make you human. Dr. Thomas was a psychiatrist at McLean, a colleague and unofficially his own doctor. She knew his life with an accuracy that made evasion pointless. Did you tell Kay? She asked. No. When Lucy called you at midnight and told you the column was posted, you said you'd handle it. I will. You spoke to Kay at dawn. She was in the morgue. And then you spoke to her again. Still nothing. I wanted to tell her in person. Is that the truth? Or is it the version that makes you sound decent? Benton closed his eyes. The problem was not only the column. The problem was Pete Marino. What he had done months ago. What Benton had failed to prevent. What Kay had survived and then tried to fold away neatly, as if trauma could be stacked in a drawer. Marino had been drunk, broken, enraged. He had come to Kay's house in Charleston, and she had let him in because friendship to Kay was a duty of mercy. He had repaid that mercy with violence. Benton had not been there. He had been in Massachusetts. Dr. Thomas said softly, You're angry. Yes. At Marino. Yes. At Kay. The silence that followed was so complete Benton could hear the building breathe. Finally he said, That isn't fair. I didn't ask if it was fair. He looked again at the column on his screen. It had made the private public. It had dragged shame into the light and handed it to a crowd. I thought I had forgiven him, Benton said. I thought that made me strong. No. It made you postponed. He rubbed his jaw and felt stubble. Kay liked to say his beard came in the color of sand. He had not shaved. He had not slept. He had been awake all night with a patient he could not discuss, a man named Oscar Bain, whose presence on the ward already felt like a fuse burning toward something larger. Lucy knows, Dr. Thomas asked. She found it. Of course she found it. She has alarms on every search engine she's built. If Kay's name appears anywhere, Lucy knows before the ink dries. And Lucy didn't call Kay? To her credit, no. I asked her not to. So now you Lucy K. Marino Berger, and half the internet are tied together by a secret that is no longer secret. Benton said nothing. Dr. Thomas did not spare him. She never did. You married Kay soon after the assault, she said. Maybe because you loved her. Maybe because you were afraid everything would fall apart, unless you wrapped your arms around it. I do love her. I know. But you don't love being a husband. He opened his eyes. She continued. You fell in love with Kay Scarpetta, the force, the mind, the brilliance, the woman who enters a room and changes its gravity. You did not fall in love with domestic life. You are punishing her for becoming your wife. That's not true. Then why has intimacy become a battlefield? Benton almost laughed, but there was no humor in him. He thought of Kay's trainer, Kit, in the gym of their building, hands guiding her form, correcting posture, touching shoulder, waist, wrist. He had avoided the gym for that reason, then despised himself for avoiding it. I'm trying to be good, he said. Good is vague. Honest is better. He took a paper clip from a manuscript on his desk and began straightening it. He had written yet another article on emotional responses to perceived outsiders, only to discover someone else had published too close to his point. Even ideas had competitors. The clip snapped in his fingers. Dr. Thomas heard the tiny break. There it is. What? Control failing. Below his window, the hospital garden was stripped bare by winter. Its fountain was dry. No leaves, no motion, no softness anywhere. You need sleep, she said. You need food. And you need to tell your wife before the world does. Benton stared at the screen. Kay was on her way to New York. Oscar Bain was waiting for her. Jamie Berger was driving toward the hospital. Marino was somewhere in the city, reading the same filth and feeling whatever men like him felt when shame became public. In a good immersive story, the audience hears the storm before the characters do. Benton heard it now. Chapter 3: Bryce and the Blizzard. Bryce talked from Belmont to Logan as if silence were a disease he had sworn to eradicate. Scarpetta sat in the passenger seat, watching snow strike the windshield in nervous white swarms, while her administrative assistant leaped from one subject to another without oxygen or mercy. His primary theme was Jack Fielding. You never hire ghosts, Bryce said. That's all I'm saying. Going back to the past is like the dog returning to its own vomit, except with benefits and a state pension. Keep your eyes on the road. I have eyes everywhere. It's a gift. Jack was from Scarpetta's past, a brilliant pathologist, a damaged man. When she had taken the chief medical examiner position in Massachusetts, she had needed someone capable at her side, someone who knew the work in his bones. She had found Jack adrift and offered him structure. Benton had been oddly mild about the decision. People often move backward when they are overwhelmed by change, he had told her. She had heard the warning and ignored the parts that hurt. Her life with Benton had never been simple. For more than 15 years, their relationship had survived distance, danger, secrecy, and the moral fracture of its beginning. They had finally married the previous summer in the garden behind her carriage house in Charleston. A small ceremony, a brief illusion of peace. Then the world shifted again. Charleston ended. Massachusetts began. McLean for Benton. Watertown for her. New York as an added obligation through John Jay College and consulting work with police, prosecutors, and psychiatric wards. Togetherness, it turned out, was another country. They were learning its language badly. Bryce interrupted her thoughts. I didn't mention it this morning because you were already dealing with corpses, homicide, suicide, and Jack's steroid personality, but there's something online. Scarpetta looked at him. What? Don't kill the messenger. That depends on the message. Gotham Gotcha. She knew the name. Everyone who worked in New York criminal justice knew it. Anonymous. Cruel. Popular enough to be advertised on taxis and buses, which said more about civilization than she cared to know. It mentioned me? It feasted on you. He explained that he had a Google alert set for her name, as if that were both a professional precaution and a personal hobby. The column had included a photograph. Bad photograph? She asked. Bad as in someone took Satan's yearbook picture in the middle of an autopsy. She said nothing. I mean, you look powerful, Bryce added quickly. Just not approachable. Bloody scrubs, shield, scalpel. Mouth open. Very horror audiobook cover. If you want the SEO-friendly version. Bryce. Right. Sorry. Traffic crawled. Snow thickened. The wipers dragged wet arcs across the glass. He continued despite himself. It's nasty, Dr. Scarpetta. Not ordinary nasty. Below the belt nasty. It's personal. Did Benton know? Bryce hesitated, and that answered enough. She took out her phone after she arrived at the airport, found the column, and read until disgust overcame curiosity. The photograph was worse than Bryce had said. She appeared monstrous mid-sentence, gloved hand extended with a scalpel like an accusation. The background had been erased, isolating her in a theatrical field of white and red. The watch on her wrist told her the picture had been taken sometime after Lucy had given it to her for her birthday. 3.5 years of possibility. 1,000 rooms. Too many eyes. She closed the screen. Later, after the flight into LaGuardia and a punishing taxi ride through the cold, she repeated Bellevue's address twice. The driver delivered her to the old psychiatric hospital instead. A dark, abandoned redstone relic behind iron gates. No, she said. Wrong Bellevue. He argued in broken English, pointing at the carved words as if granite could overrule her. She looked past the fence toward the modern hospital several blocks away, a cluster of towers in winter haze. He refused to drive farther. So she paid, stepped into the wind, and dragged her luggage down the sidewalk. Her suitcase, packed with homemade food, toppled every few steps. Bags slid from her shoulders. The cold cut through her coat. She pressed her earpiece and called Benton. I'm almost there, she said, just as the suitcase fell over again. Damn it. Kay? Where are you? I was thrown out of a taxi. What? The battery died. For a moment she stood in the street, furious and absurdly lonely, surrounded by traffic and snow in the indifferent city. Then she bent, righted the suitcase, and kept walking toward Bellevue. Chapter 4. Prosecutor at the cafeteria. Benton's phone rang minutes after Kay's call cut off. He answered quickly. What happened? I was about to ask you that, Jamie Berger said. He closed his eyes. I thought you were Kay. I gathered. She having trouble. Taxi problem. How charming. While we're discussing trouble, when exactly were you planning to tell me about Gotham Gotcha? Benton turned toward the window. It's complicated. That phrase should be outlawed. Jamie Berger was not easily shaken. Her voice usually carried the clean edge of a courtroom blade. Today it carried anger tightly packed beneath professionalism. When we spoke 6 hours ago, she said, you might have mentioned that a gossip column had turned Dr. Scarpetta into the day's public sacrifice. I should have. Yes, you should. He heard street noise in the background. A horn. Tires over slush. I'm 2 minutes from Bellevue, Berger said. Meet me in the cafeteria. She hung up. Benton sat a moment longer. On his screen, the anonymous column remained open. He wanted to close it but did not. Some part of him believed he deserved to keep looking. Downstairs, the cafeteria smelled of coffee, steam table vegetables, disinfectant, and the fatigue of hospital employees working a holiday. Berger arrived in a dark coat, hair windblown, face pale from cold. She carried no visible patience. "She's on her way?" Berger asked. "Walking from the wrong Bellevue." Berger's mouth tightened. Of course. They found a small table near a wall. Around them, nurses ate quickly, paramedics leaned over trays, and a family whispered in Spanish beside a vending machine. It was not private, but hospitals had a way of making privacy out of exhaustion. Everyone was too tired to listen. "Tell me about Bain," Benton said. "I was hoping you would tell me. He demanded me by name." Then Kay. "He's frightened but controlled. Grandiose. Possibly delusional. Definitely intelligent. He also may have murdered Terry Bridges." Benton watched her. "And you may not have enough to hold him." "Correct." The word was clipped. Berger continued. "He found her, or says he found her. Called it in. Then insisted on being transported here because he claimed he might hurt himself. He refused examination by anyone except Dr. Scarpetta. And you agreed. I preserved what cooperation I could. You also put Kay in a room with the man who may have killed someone, and is obsessed enough to request her." Berger leaned closer. "Do not lecture me about risk. I know exactly what this is." "Do you?" Her eyes sharpened. "Are we talking about Bain? Or are we talking about Marino?" The name landed between them. Benton did not answer. Berger said, "I hired Marino because you asked me to help him. Because despite everything, you believed he was salvageable. Do you remember that?" "I remember. And now this gossip sewer has revived what happened, and everyone's afraid the pieces will collide. Kay shouldn't have to face him." "I agree. Which is why I've instructed him to stay away from Bellevue." Benton almost laughed. "You think that will stop him?" "No. I think consequences might." They sat in silence while a woman in scrubs laughed too loudly at another table, then abruptly stopped. Berger looked past Benton toward the cafeteria entrance. "This was supposed to be about Terry Bridges." "It still is." "No. It's already larger than that. Bain may be mentally ill. Or he may be performing mental illness. He says he is being watched. Controlled. Targeted. He speaks about stolen thoughts and conspiracies, then pivots to legal rights with perfect clarity. He knows enough to be dangerous. What does he know about Kay?" "I don't know." That was the truth Benton feared most. A hospital page crackled overhead. Somewhere above them on the prison ward, Oscar Bain waited behind steel. And outside, Kay Scarpetta was crossing the last blocks of Cold City pavement, pulling behind her a suitcase full of food meant for a home that did not seem to exist today. Chapter 5. Marino's Quiet Punishment. Pete Marino lived in a Harlem walk-up where the smell of fried chicken and short ribs drifted through the walls with the persistence of memory. His apartment was small enough that 12 steps could turn pacing into a prison exercise. A television tray served as his dining table. A straight-back chair faced Fifth Avenue, where traffic never stopped and people moved through the cold with collars raised and heads down. He stacked deli turkey on whole wheat bread, folded it, dipped it into mustard, and washed it down with non-alcoholic beer. Sharps. 0.3% alcohol. He had calculated once how many bottles it might take to feel something close to a buzz. The answer had been ridiculous. The experiment had ended only in bladder pressure and self-contempt. Since Charleston, he had lost 50 pounds and nearly everything that had once made him recognizable to himself. The Harley leathers were gone, traded at a street bazaar for knockoff suits, shirts, ties, and dress shoes. The diamond stud had left behind a tiny misplaced hole in his ear. He no longer shaved his head clean. A ragged band of gray circled his skull like a tarnished halo that had slipped. In treatment, Nancy had explained him to himself with metaphors he hated because they fit. Alcohol, she said, was the match. His anger was the bonfire. His father had handed him both without apology. She told him to attend AA or risk becoming a dry drunk, sober in body, poisoned in spirit. He had gone 3 times. That had seemed enough. He had introduced himself. He had listened. He had decided the 12 steps could be completed quickly if a man applied discipline. Step 9, making amends. He declined on the grounds that contacting those he had harmed might harm them further. This was not cowardice, he told himself. It was ethics. He did not put Kay Scarpetta on his list of people he had harmed. He did not put her on the list of people who had harmed him either. Then he moved into this apartment near Bill Clinton's office, and walking past that building made him think of Hillary Clinton, which made him think of powerful women, which made him think of Kay. Soon the two women blurred in his mind. Faces on television, voices of authority, women who could run the world and never look back. Kay on CNN. Kay in court. Kay in memory. His heart ached with an ugly tenderness that felt like infection. On the kitchen counter, his computer displayed Gotham Gotcha. He had saved the column and read it too many times. It made the worst act of his life into entertainment. It made Kay a spectacle. It made him a grotesque footnote. He wanted to find the anonymous writer and rearrange parts of that person permanently. His phone rang. "Yeah," Marino said. Detective Mike Morales answered in his slow, lazy voice. "Data mining, bro." "I'm not your bro." Morales enjoyed sounding half asleep. Marino suspected it was an act. The man had gone to Dartmouth, then medical school at Johns Hopkins, then somehow become NYPD, which Marino considered suspicious on principle. Nobody with the doctor's path became a cop unless something in him liked blood more than medicine. "I've been running comparisons," Morales said. "I may have two older cases that echo Terry Bridges." "What cases?" "Summer of 2003. A teenage boy in Greenwich. Nude bound, strangled. Ligature missing. Body dumped. No suspect." "That's thin." Second case was Baltimore. Young woman, 21. Also nude. Hands bound. Strangled. Body in a dumpster near the harbor. Still thin. Both had one piece of jewelry left on them. Thin gold bracelet around the left ankle. Marino stopped moving. "Terry Bridges had the same?" he asked. "Exactly. A signature. A ritual. A message," Morales said. "Oscar Bain has money, time, a car, no real structure. He could travel." "You're calling him a serial killer?" "I'm saying I like patterns when they start waving." Marino opened another Sharps and drank too fast. Then Morales added too casually, "Scarpetta's in town. She's examining Oscar." Marino felt heat rush into his face. Why the hell would anyone let that happen? He requested her. Berger allowed it. The room seemed smaller. Oscar Bain had asked for Kay by name. That meant he knew her, followed her, imagined her. Men did not summon women like Kay Scarpetta by accident. Morales's tone sharpened. "You stay away from Bellevue. You hear me? Kay doesn't need more stress. Berger doesn't need a scandal. If Scarpetta walks away from consulting because of you, Benton follows and we lose both." Marino hated the way Morales said Kay. He had never called her that. Not in all the years beside her. Through morgues, crime scenes, holidays, hotel rooms, late-night coffee, and death. She had always been Doc or Scarpetta, or something safely distant. Morales said, "About what's online?" "Don't," Marino snapped. After he hung up, he stood in the middle of the apartment with the phone in his hand and the city roaring outside. Then he looked at the saved column again. In every relaxing narration there is a moment before the music darkens, before the listener understands that quiet is not peace. Marino's quiet was punishment, and it was beginning to crack. Chapter 6. The Patient Who Chose Her. Oscar Bain sat on the examination table in a thin cotton gown, his shackled feet dangling above the floor. The room was one of Bellevue's infirmaries on the forensic psychiatric ward. Beige steel door. Harsh light. Stainless cabinets. The faint smell of antiseptic layered over institutional air. A correction officer stood near the wall, solid and silent, giving Scarpetta enough room to work but not enough to be alone. Oscar had one blue eye and one green eye. The effect was disconcerting, as though two different witnesses observed her from the same face. He was a little person, likely achondroplastic. His head and torso were larger in proportion to his short arms and bowed legs. His fingers were broad and separated in a trident shape, yet nothing about him seemed frail. His muscles were compact, his movements controlled, his body visibly altered by effort and vanity. His teeth were unnaturally white. His hair was dyed a bright yellow gold. His nails were buffed smooth. His brow had the stillness of cosmetic intervention. He had remade what he could. What remained unchosen had made him furious. "I need to measure you," Scarpetta said. "I'm 4 feet and a quarter inch," he replied. 109 pounds. Shoe size varies. Depends on men's or women's sizing. "I'll measure anyway." He extended his arms while chains whispered and clinked. She measured from shoulder joint to fingertip, then his legs from hip to toe. She recorded the numbers. "Your full name is Oscar Lawrence Bain," she said, checking the paperwork. 34 years old. Right-handed. Address. "Aren't you going to ask why I demanded you?" His voice trembled. Not weakly. Dramatically. "Why I made sure Jamie Berger knew I wouldn't cooperate unless you came?" Scarpetta set the file down. "You can tell me if you want." "Screw her," Oscar said, and tears filled his uneven eyes. Terry would still be alive if not for her. The name entered the room and changed the air. "Terry?" Scarpetta asked. He turned his head toward the wall. She was everything. "Are you having difficulty hearing me?" "My right ear is deaf. Childhood infections. But you hear me with the left." "I hear you. I know who you are." He looked back sharply. "You care about victims." "I'm a victim." "In what way?" "My life has been destroyed. Someone stole my mind. Someone stole Terry. They've been communicating with me for months." Scarpetta labeled evidence envelopes without reacting. "Who are they?" she asked. "I don't know. A group. A cell. Government, maybe. Or people who hate little people. Nazis had lists too, you know. Jews. Homosexuals. Gypsies. The disabled. Anyone inconvenient to the master race." "You told police this?" "You have to be careful who you tell. I tried to warn Jamie Berger a month ago. I called her office. She wouldn't speak to me. She assigned some cop who treated me like a lunatic. Now Terry's dead." His tears spilled. The chains rang as he wiped his face. Scarpetta examined shallow abrasions on the left side of his neck. Fresh scabbing. No epithelial regeneration. Recent. "How are they communicating?" she asked. "Electronics. Microwave transmission. Voice-to-skull technology. Through-wall radar. Silent sound. You can buy pieces of it online. And don't tell me governments don't experiment on civilians. Radiation experiments happened. Plutonium injections. Secret feeding of radioactive material. That is history, not delusion. I know those experiments occurred." He seemed relieved. "Then you understand why I trust you. Why would you? You were brave on CNN after Benazir Bhutto was assassinated. Terry and I watched. You weren't performing compassion. You were trying to hide it." Scarpetta reached for her camera. "Seeing someone on television doesn't mean you know them." "I know enough." He spoke of her as if they shared a private moral contract. It made her uneasy. "I need to be clear," she said. "I was asked to examine your injuries. I don't know this case. I don't know what happened to Terry. I don't know what you did or didn't do." Shock passed across his face, then suspicion. "You've been told not to talk," he said. "No. I'm telling you that if you are charged, my notes and testimony may be subpoenaed. Anything you say to me about the incident could become evidence. You're a doctor. It's privileged. Not unconditionally." He stared at her. Anger stiffened his body. "They won't find cause to charge me," he said. "I gave them my clothes, my car, my apartment. I have nothing to hide. But you must see my apartment. I insisted they can't go in unless you see it too." "Why?" "So you'll understand how I've had to live. So you'll be my witness." The officer shifted slightly near the wall. Scarpetta felt the steel door behind her without turning. She understood now why Benton had sounded afraid. Oscar Bain had not asked for her because he trusted medicine. He had asked for her because he had already placed her inside his story. Chapter 7, Mind Justice. Scarpetta pulled a plastic chair close to the examination table and sat, making herself level with Oscar Bain. The chain settled. The correction officer remained still. Oscar watched her with those mismatched eyes. Blue and green. Ice and bottle glass. An unsettling symmetry of imbalance. "You should have a lawyer," she said. "I need you. You need counsel. I need mind justice." "Explain that." "When your mind is stolen, justice is getting it back." He said it with the conviction of a man describing a legal principle, not a metaphor. Scarpetta opened her notebook. "What do you believe has been stolen?" "My thoughts. My identity. My privacy. My will in pieces. They know where I go. They make signals. They harass. They practice." "Practice for what?" "Control." The word seemed to please and frighten him simultaneously. "You think you are a test subject," she said. "I know someone is using me. The CIA had behavior modification programs decades ago. Neuroelectromagnetic research. Covert projects. Why would anyone believe such things ended? They only got better." "Do you hear voices?" He frowned. "Not like that." "Do you receive instructions?" "I receive pressure." "Pressure to harm yourself?" "Maybe. To harm someone else?" He looked away. Scarpetta waited. "I wouldn't hurt anyone," he said finally. "But the universe balances accounts. Jamie Berger failed me. If she loses someone she loves, that will be balance. Do you want to create that balance?" "I said I wouldn't hurt anyone. Do you want someone else to?" He began crying again, but the tears now had anger inside them. "You keep trying to trap me. I know your obligations. If I make a threat, you can report it. I'm not stupid." "No," Scarpetta said. "You're not. That was part of the danger." He wiped his nose with the tissue she gave him. "I trusted Berger first. She had a chance. She could have acted. Instead, she ignored me. Terry paid." "What did you tell Berger's office?" "That I was being stalked, electronically harassed, targeted. That people were inside my life. They dismissed me. Because I'm small. Because I'm strange. Because nobody wants to hear truth from a body like mine." There it was, pain, humiliation, grievance, intelligence, and possibly madness, all braided together. Scarpetta photographed the abrasions near his ear, his neck, his wrists. There were marks consistent with recent contact, but not severe. Superficial. Ambiguous. The kind of findings that rarely saved anyone from accusation. "Did you tell Dr. Wesley any of this?" she asked. "I allowed him to evaluate my mind. That's all. He can tell you I'm not crazy. He may not agree with your interpretation. He's married to you. He'll understand enough." The intimacy of that statement tightened the room. "How do you know so much about us?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "It's not as if you're unknown. Public information is not personal knowledge. Sometimes public people are careless. Sometimes others are careless for them." A chill moved through her that had nothing to do with the room. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you and I both know privacy is an illusion." He looked toward the door, then lowered his voice. "They know I'm here. Maybe they can't get through all this steel, but they know. You need to listen while I can still speak freely. Eventually they'll control what's left. You believe you may die. I expect it. By suicide. By whatever method they choose. Do you intend to kill yourself?" "I don't care if I live." "That is not the same answer." His face hardened. "You sound like them when you split words. Words matter. In court, yes. In death, not as much." Scarpetta wrote slowly. The act of writing sometimes calmed people. Sometimes it enraged them. Oscar watched each movement of her pen as if the notebook were a vessel for his survival. "You teach?" she asked. "Yes." "Where?" "Gotham College." "I don't know it." "It's nowhere." He said it without irony, and for one strange second she wondered whether he meant the college did not exist, or whether he did. Then he leaned closer. I know you don't fully believe me yet. You will. When you see my apartment, you will. Scarpetta heard a faint sound beyond the door. Voices in the corridor, keys, institutional life moving forward. In the slow rhythm of this dark storytelling, she understood that Oscar was offering not answers but doors. And every door he opened led farther in. Chapter 8. The Columnist's Shadow. The woman who kept Gotham Gotcha alive called herself Shrew. It was not the name on her bank account, tax records, driver's license, or prescription bottles. It was the name her dead husband had given her, first in irritation, later in habit, and sometimes, though she hated admitting it, in affection. Don't be such a goddamn shrew, he used to say when she complained about cigar smoke, wet towels, or the way he left newspapers spread like shed skin across the couch. Then at 5 o'clock, if the day had not ruined him completely, he would say, "Pour us a drink, my darling little shrew." She would bring bourbon, ice, and cashews. He would pat the cushion beside him. They would watch the news, which was never good. Later, silence would gather between them until dinner became only utensils and chewing. Afterward, he would go to bed with a book. One day, he went out on an errand and did not return. She had become shrew completely after that. Her husband would have despised her current work. He would have called it detritus. He would have said anonymous cruelty was not employment but infection. He would have been suspicious that she had never met her employer, never spoken to the columnist, and had been hired over the phone by an agent who claimed to live in the United Kingdom despite sounding like he had learned England from gangster films. She had signed documents she was not permitted to show an attorney. She had worked a month without pay as a trial. Then money began appearing in her bank account every 2 weeks. No taxes withheld. No benefits. No vacation. No sick leave. She was on call always. The boss, her private name for the anonymous columnist, sent files at odd hours, often one by one, even when Shrew suspected several were finished in advance. It was a form of control. The boss could have given her a cue and freedom. Instead, the boss made her wait. Christmas through New Year's was the worst and most important season. Website traffic surged. Advertisers paid. The fans came hungry for humiliation wrapped as entertainment. The boss increased publication to daily posts, with New Year's Day reserved for the most sensational offerings. Today there were 2. The first had already gone live. Dr. K. Scarpetta transformed into a forensic diva, a manipulator, a hypocrite in bloody scrubs. The second had arrived a short time ago, and Shrew had read it 3 times with growing unease. The boss almost never targeted the same person twice in one day. This second piece was different. More intimate. More venomous. It reached backward into Scarpetta's childhood with details Shrew had never seen in the reader submissions folder. NBS the boss had marked it. Never before seen. That tag excited advertisers and loyal readers. It meant fresh meat. The column described a poor Italian family in Florida. A sick father, a grocery store, a girl who became too serious too soon. It mocked her Catholic school scholarship, her intelligence, her loneliness. Then it slid into story form, where the boss's writing became strongest and most disturbing. Little Kay alone in a chemistry lab. An unnamed Sister Polly. A broken pencil. A quarter pressed into a child's palm as restitution. A slap. A bathroom door locked. A belt removed. Shrew stopped reading for a moment and looked away from the screen. She was not sentimental. Sentimentality was a luxury for people with family, pets, gardens, dinner invitations. But something about the piece felt less like gossip and more like invasion. Not public mockery. Excavation. Where had the boss found these details? Reader submissions came to Shrew first. She sifted them, tagged them, sorted rumor from possible fact, malice from usable malice. Nothing like this had passed through her hands. So either the boss had another source or the boss knew Scarpetta. Shrew adjusted the formatting, checked spelling, corrected spacing, and prepared the piece for release. Her fingers moved with professional obedience while her mind resisted. Outside her window, Murray Hill was cold and gray. Across the street, A police car had been parked for hours in front of the brownstone opposite her building. Perhaps an officer had moved in. Perhaps not. In the world of anonymous cruelty, paranoia could be occupational. Still, as she typed her administrator password, she felt watched. The second Scarpetta column went live. Chapter 9: Food for an Empty Home. By the time Scarpetta reached Bellevue's glass entrance, her hands ached from cold and her shoulders burned beneath the weight of her bags. The atrium was bright, modern, and indifferent. People hurried past with visitor badges, flowers, discharge papers, coffee. She stood still just inside the doors, gathering herself, while the suitcase leaned against her leg like a stubborn child. Inside it were the food she had made for Benton. Meatballs carefully packed, chickpea soup, bread, mozzarella, ricotta folded with basil, the ingredients of a private New Year's celebration that had dissolved into autopsy tables, snowstorms, and a psychiatric ward. There would be nothing in the New York apartment. Benton, left alone, survived on takeout and concentration. The thought made her sadder than it should have. She called him from a lobby phone after finding her charger uselessly buried in luggage. He answered on the first ring. "I'm inside," she said. "I'll come down." "No. Tell me where." He directed her to his office. She rode the elevator up through layers of hospital life. Trauma, medicine, psychiatry, custody. Each floor had its own smell, its own urgency. When she entered Benton's office, he looked older than he had that morning. Not by years. By impact. His hair was slightly disordered. His shirt had the creased fatigue of a man who had slept in a chair or not at all. He embraced her carefully, as if unsure whether she might break or strike him. "You should have told me," she said against his shoulder. He did not pretend ignorance. "I know." She pulled back. "Bryce told me. In the car. I read enough. I'm sorry. That someone wrote it? Or that you didn't tell me?" "Both." She looked at him for a long moment. Anger moved through her, but beneath it was exhaustion. The column was obscene, but the betrayal was smaller and sharper. Benton had tried to manage her. Again. "Don't protect me by keeping me uninformed," she said. "I wasn't trying to." "Yes. You were." He accepted it. She set the suitcase near his desk. "Food. Since apparently one of us still believes in civilization." That almost made him smile. Then he told her what he could about Oscar Bain, Terry Bridges, the old cases Morales had found, the gold anklet around the left ankle, the possibility of a killer repeating a ritual across years and states. He did not mention everything from his conversation with Dr. Thomas. Marriage had its confidences. Therapy had its own. Scarpetta listened without interrupting. "A gold anklet," she said finally. "On bodies otherwise stripped. A signature possibly. Or staging." "Yes. And Oscar requested me before anyone knew whether he'd be charged." "Yes. Meaning he planned for me." Benton's silence confirmed it. She opened her crime scene case and checked its contents with the calm ritual of a surgeon laying out instruments. Camera. Swabs. Evidence envelopes. Measuring tape. Alternate light. Labels. Gloves. Forms. The physical vocabulary of truth. Benton watched her. "What?" she asked. "I don't want you alone with him." "I won't be. There's an officer. You know what I mean." She closed the case. "I know." For a moment neither spoke. Between them stood Marino, the gossip column, Lucy somewhere in the city, Berger waiting, Oscar Bain behind steel, Terry Bridges dead, and the fragile architecture of their marriage. Finally Benton said, "Kay." "Not now." He nodded. The audiobook of their lives, if anyone had the cruelty to record it, would not be relaxing narration. It would be pauses where words should have been, and the sound of two people loving each other badly under pressure. Scarpetta lifted the case. "Take me to him," she said. Chapter 10. Left anklet. While Scarpetta examined Oscar Bain, the machinery outside that room began turning faster. Detective Morales compiled old files with the satisfaction of a man who believed a pattern had introduced itself to him personally. Greenwich, Baltimore, New York. 3 victims separated by years in geography, all vulnerable in different ways. All stripped, all bound, all strangled, all marked by a thin gold chain around the left ankle. The left side, the heart side, a romantic symbol twisted into ownership, or a killer's joke, or a ritual so private it might mean nothing to anyone but the person who fastened it. Jamie Berger did not like coincidences that wore jewelry. In the cafeteria, she read the summaries while Benton stood nearby with coffee he did not drink. Her face remained composed, but he saw the change in her eyes. If Bain did the earlier cases, she said, he has hidden well. If he didn't, Benton replied, someone may be arranging for him to look as if he did. Do you think he's capable? Of murder? Yes. Of elaborate manipulation? Yes. Of genuine psychosis? Also yes. That's not helpful. It's accurate. Berger pushed the pages away. He called my office a month ago. I didn't speak with him. You couldn't speak with every unstable caller in New York. That will comfort no one if he's telling the truth. Benton said nothing. Truth in their professions rarely arrived pure. It came contaminated by motive, memory, fear, and blood. Oscar could be a killer using delusion as camouflage. He could be mentally ill and innocent. He could be both dangerous and targeted. Human beings were inconvenient that way. Berger's phone vibrated. She looked at the screen and frowned. Morales again, she said. About Marino? About keeping Marino away. Benton's jaw tightened. Berger answered, listened, then said, no, absolutely not. If he shows up at Bellevue, I'll deal with him myself. She ended the call. He's worried, Benton said. He doesn't get to convert worry into proximity. No. They both knew worry was not what drove Marino alone. Guilt drove him. Possession drove him. Shame drove him now that the internet had reopened the wound and invited strangers to comment. Berger lowered her voice. If this becomes public beyond that column, if Marino, Scarpetta, you and my office become the story, then Terry Bridges disappears beneath scandal. She already risks disappearing beneath Oscar's performance. I know. Upstairs in the examination room, Oscar spoke mind control, stolen identity, and justice. Downstairs, Berger considered warrants, probable cause, public risk, and a dead woman whose ankle bore a delicate chain. A city case was never one story. It was 12 stories pretending to be one. Victim, suspect, prosecutor, examiner, witness, gossip, marriage, past violence, political pressure, media appetite, memory, evidence. The trick was not to choose the most dramatic thread. The trick was to find the true one before it tightened around someone else's throat. Berger gathered the files. When Scarpetta finishes, I want to know what she found. You may not be entitled to everything. Berger gave him a look. Don't start. If Oscar made statements under expectation of medical confidentiality, I know the law. And he knows it too. That stopped her. Benton continued. He's building walls while inviting us inside. Be careful which doors you think are open. Berger looked toward the elevators. I'm always careful, she said. But Benton knew that was not true. None of them were. Not when the dead demanded speed. The living demanded answers, and the world watched with a search engine in one hand and a stone in the other. Chapter 11. Shrew at the window. After the second column went live, Shrew watched the numbers climb. Comments bloomed beneath the post like mold. Some readers laughed. Some condemned. Some demanded more. A few defended Dr. Scarpetta, but even their outrage fed traffic, and traffic was the only morality the website recognized. Shrew refreshed the analytics dashboard. Visitors from New York, Boston, Miami, London, Rome. Search terms spiked. K. Scarpetta scandal, forensic doctor abuse, Gotham gotcha Scarpetta, medical examiner gossip, audiobook true crime story, immersive story. The internet loved keywords because keywords were hooks, and people willingly placed themselves on them. She should have felt pride. The post was performing beautifully. Instead, unease moved around her apartment like a draft. She rose to make tea she did not want. The kitchen was narrow, clean, and joyless. Her husband's old mug still sat in the cabinet, though she never used it. She touched it sometimes the way some people touched religious medals. When she returned to the desk, she looked again across the street. The police car remained. No flashing lights. No movement. Just presence. Her building faced a row of brownstones expensive enough to suggest surgeons, bankers inherited money, and divorces negotiated by specialists. Not beat cops. Certainly not patrol officers who left marked cars outside for entire afternoons. She told herself there were explanations. A domestic complaint. A dignitary. A sick relative. Coincidence. Yet the longer she looked, the more the parked car seemed part of the column she had just posted, as if the private world behind the screen had begun to answer back. A new email arrived. No subject. From the boss. Shrew sat before opening it. The boss did not usually send notes after publication. Files came, instructions came, corrections came. Not conversation. The message contained one line. Watch for the woman with the suitcase. Shrew read it twice. Then a second line appeared, as if delayed by the server, or as if she had failed to notice it at first. Do not interfere. Her mouth went dry. What woman? What suitcase? Dr. Scarpetta? Someone else? How could Shrew interfere with anything? She administered a website. She corrected formatting. She posted poison she did not write. She clicked reply then stopped. The rules were clear. Do not ask unnecessary questions. Do not initiate contact unless there is a technical issue. Do not save correspondence outside approved channels. Do not attempt to identify the boss. Her husband's voice surfaced in memory. Disgusting detritus. She closed the reply window. The police car across the street remained still. For the first time since accepting the job, Shrew wondered whether anonymity had not protected her but erased her. If no one knew whom she worked for, no one could help her. If no one knew what she knew, no one could measure the danger of it. She reread the Scarpetta childhood column and thought of the locked bathroom, the nun's belt, the child bent under authority disguised as holiness. She wondered whether the story was true. She wondered whether truth mattered when used as a weapon. Her screen pinged again. This time it was not the boss. It was an automated alert. Traffic surge exceeding projected threshold. The site was thriving. Shrew looked from the analytics to the street. A woman appeared on the sidewalk near the brownstone opposite, bundled in a dark coat, pulling a suitcase that tipped stubbornly to one side. Not Scarpetta. Too young. Different walk. A messenger? A tenant? A stranger? The woman paused by the steps, turned her head slightly, and seemed to look directly at Shrew's window. Then she disappeared inside. Shrew did not move. The kettle in the kitchen began to whistle. A thin rising cry that filled the apartment until she finally stood to silence it. Outside, the police car waited. Inside, Gotham gotcha fed. Chapter 12. Steel doors, glass screens. The day moved toward evening without becoming softer. At Bellevue, the sky beyond the windows darkened from gray to iron. Hospital lights strengthened. Corridors shone. Doors locked and unlocked with the blunt authority of keys. Scarpetta finished photographing Oscar Bain's superficial injuries and documenting every abrasion, every complaint, every inconsistency. She did not know whether the marks proved struggle, staging, accident, or nothing at all. The body often told the truth, but it did not always tell the whole truth in the first sitting. Oscar watched her pack the camera. "You'll see my apartment," he said. "I'll consider what is appropriate." "No. You must. You promised by coming here." "I promised nothing beyond this examination." His face changed so quickly the correction officer shifted his weight. "You can't abandon me too." "I am not abandoning you. I am setting limits." "Limits are how institutions kill people politely." Scarpetta closed her case. "Oscar, if you believe you may harm yourself, say so clearly." He smiled without warmth. "You want magic words. I want honesty. I want Terry alive." The sentence emptied him. For a moment his grief seemed real enough to silence calculation. Tears filled his eyes again, and he looked not like a suspect or a patient but like a man trapped inside a body and mind that had never allowed him peace. Then the moment passed. "Jamie Berger will pay," he whispered. Scarpetta looked at him. "What does that mean?" "It means the universe is precise." "That is not an answer. It's the only one you get." She held his gaze. "If I believe there is a specific threat to an identifiable person, confidentiality will not protect it." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm careful." The officer opened the steel door when she signaled. Cold corridor air touched her face as if the room itself had been holding its breath. Benton waited outside. He saw her expression and did not ask in front of the officer. They walked together toward a consultation room, their footsteps subdued by institutional flooring. "What did he say?" Benton asked once the door closed behind them. "Enough to frighten me. Not enough to free me." She told him what she could. Mind control. Berger. Terry. The apartment. The insistence that Scarpetta serve as witness. The careful almost threats. Benton listened, face tightening by degrees. "He's constructing a private legal universe," he said. "He's already placed us in it." "Kay. I know." Her phone, newly charged, vibrated. A message from Bryce. Second column. "Worse. Call me." She did not open the link. "Not yet." Benton saw the message preview. "There's another one?" "Yes. I'm sorry." She sat down, suddenly tired beyond language. Who would know these things? He had no answer, and that frightened her more than any theory. Across the city, Marino stood in his Harlem apartment with his coat on, keys in hand, fighting the order to stay away. Across town, Jamie Berger pushed for warrants while old murders rose from archives like bodies surfacing through ice. In Murray Hill, Shrew watched a police car and wondered whether she had helped aim a weapon. On the ward, Oscar Bain waited behind steel, small and furious, grieving or pretending or both. And somewhere unseen, the anonymous boss type selected, arranged, and released. The story had become a web of locked rooms and open screens. For YouTube audiobook listeners, this would be the point where the relaxing narration lowers its voice, inviting attention rather than alarm. The city outside would hum. Snow would soften the edges of buildings. A woman would breathe once before opening the next door. Scarpetta looked at Benton. "We go to the apartment," she said. He did not argue. The first day of the year had begun with bodies on steel tables. It ended with the living under examination. Thank you for listening to Steel Doors and Silent Evidence on StoryRealm Audio. If you enjoyed this immersive story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more mystery audiobooks and atmospheric storytelling. See you in the next story.